Page 35. In terms of actual meditative practice, how does the yogi review the body as consisting of the four great elements? What I taught you just now is just an introduction to elements. But how are you going to sit down for 1 hour or more practicing this? You know, reducing your body to just elements.
We decided that, one of our yogis said that she would scan her body. She would scan her body in different positions, sitting, standing, lying down, I guess, walking, and observe how the elements manifest in terms of the texture, that is hardness, softness, also observing temperature of the various elements in the body, the hot and cold, motion, which is manifested by the wind element, and fluidity and cohesion.
Yeah, anybody else want to share how they do this meditation? Because different people might have different methods. Yeah, please come.
Hello.
Yeah, it's on. Turn it over.
The thing is, just now I was standing, just from my experience, while I was standing, I feel a lot of pressure on my leg, so I feel hardness, of course. And after a while, then you feel there is this heat, so warm, your leg get warmer. So I begin to move as well. So that means I notice the wind elements as well, and the earth element as in hardness, and of course the heat. And I shift my leg, because one leg here. Then I shift, find that this side is kinable. Then I thought that might be the wind element lighter, when I lift to one side. So I noticed the element, and of course, Jin Anna. My body very hard, one lumpy here. So it's like together like that. So it would have to be the water element that hold everything into very lumpy thing. And at the same time, I feel hard, like, because once a second, earth is so, because it's hardness as well. And then I feel the whole body heat again. So basically, it's going through the elements that I see, Bhante.
Okay, right. Anyone else want to share?
Okay. In terms of the four elements, we decided to note the characteristics of the different elements, and then when realizing their characteristics, we note the arising and falling of these elements. And after you realize the arising and falling of the elements, you contemplate on the cause and conditions. So in terms of the characteristics of the elements, for example, the nature of the earth element is hardness and softness, rough and smooth, heavy and light, stability of the earth. For example, the teeth is hardness, the shoulder can feel heavy, your body can feel heavy. For water element, it's cohesion, like a dough that lumps together. For the fire element, is heat and cold. For example, you breathe out, you can feel the heat of the breath. For the air element, it will be the tightness or tension. Example, the air movement in your abdomen, and you feel your body swaying.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this seems to be very much like the Mahasi method. I think most of us are influenced by that because what we do is we start off with the rising and falling, and then after that, when other elements, other sensations become more obvious, you move your attention over to them and look at how the elements change, right? This seems to be like a natural process of observing how the elements change. That's one way of doing it. Well, if you have done any of the Goenka retreats before, anyone here has done any Goenka retreats before? Yeah, you will see that they also do sensations, although they call them feelings. They call it Vedananupasana, but I feel that it's more of physical sensations. You start off for the first few days doing anapana to compose your mind, and then once your samadhi is quite strong, then on the next day onwards, they will ask you to scan your body in a very systematic way from the crown to your toes, square inch by square inch, on the outside and then after that on the inside. Outside means on the skin, and then inside means in your organs. So what they do is that they just want you to see the arising and passing away of sensations without actually analyzing them into the elements, right? Their main emphasis is seeing the arising and passing away of sensations. Following that method, one could also do like what we did just now, scanning the body and looking for sensations and analyzing them, rather than waiting for the sensations to come. Now, there's one interesting technique in the Goenka method. It's a bit different from the Mahasi method, because in the Mahasi method, you zoom in on the most obvious sensation, right? And then you try to penetrate it so that it dissolves or disintegrates, to see the impermanent nature. In the Goenka technique, you don't do that. Your emphasis is on maintaining your systematic scanning. So if you go through certain parts of the body which are more intense than others, you just know it and you just move on. You don't settle on it and try to penetrate into it. It's just sweeping up and down, up and down, up and down, and you're going through subtle sensations, gross sensations, and then subtle sensations, gross sensations, and gross, subtle. It doesn't matter. You just go up and down. You just want to see things arising and passing away. You're not trying to zoom in on anything in particular. That is also an interesting technique, because if sometimes in the course of a meditation, when the pain becomes too unbearable for you, the more you look at it, the more unbearable, and then if you don't look back at your mind, you automatically tense up again and you aggravate the situation. Yeah. So if you feel that you have not reached your threshold yet, and your posture will not harm your body, all right? Because if you have got some physical problems and you cannot sit too long, don't try too hard. Okay, you have to use your discretion. You feel that it's still okay, I still want to sit, because once I get up, my samadhi is going to be disrupted, so I want to continue to sit. And my body can handle it. It's just that the mind cannot handle it. So if you cannot really zoom in, what you can do is you can follow this Goenka technique. Just be aware of some other things. There are so many sensations in the body. Why must you just be aware of unpleasant sensations? You can be aware of pleasant sensations. While you're sitting under the fan, your buttocks might be very painful, but the fan is blowing and you feel nice on your skin. Right? So you can go to the pleasant sensations and be aware of pleasant sensations, or you can be aware of other more neutral sensations. When you do that, you actually distract your attention from the very unbearable sensation, and it will fade into the background. Yeah? And then eventually, because you are still quite focused on what you're doing, the mind will also calm down and you're building up composure rather than being unsettled by that unbearable sensation. So this is also an interesting technique to incorporate into your practice. Another way of doing the 4 elements meditation is the power way, where instead of waiting for obvious sensations to arise, or instead of just watching the rising and passing away of sensations without analyzing them, they go about analyzing it in a systematic way. Just like what I did just now. I said, okay, first you try to find out a place that is hard, right? So once you get the experience of hardness, I think what they do is they would use the tongue to press the teeth. All right? When you contact with the teeth, you can feel hardness, right? Okay, so you have this experience of hardness. You store that in your memory, in your sanya. And then you use that sanya to go through systematically from the top of your head to your toes to locate all those places where you have a similar experience. Right? Which means that it is a very specialized directed awareness. You're just looking at hardness to the whole body. You don't worry about the other sensations. You don't worry about the other elements. You just go through hardness throughout the whole body. And because you're looking for hardness, the mind also unconsciously creates hardness. So eventually you will find that the whole body hardens, like a solid piece of rock, and you cannot move. So what they recommend is that you must always look at two aspects, opposing aspects of an element, hardness and softness, so that you can balance. Or it could be heaviness and lightness, or coarseness and smoothness, right? You have to balance it. So what they do is they finish it first, one round, until you are very skilled in hardness, and then you go to softness, right? And then after that you go to various aspects of the different elements. So after you have done that, then you become very, very skilled in locating the elements. You already know exactly what each element is supposed to feel like. After they've mastered each element, doing it in this style, then what they would do is they would do it very fast. It says, in this body there's just the earth element, and they will sweep from the top from the crown to the toes, and that's just the earth element, just feeling all the various varieties of the earth element, right? And then another sweep, what they call the water element. Then you will feel all the experiences of the water element. Then another sweep, that is the fire element. Then another sweep, that's the wind element. So they will go on rotating this way. In this body there's only the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the air element, until their mind becomes so well composed that they can begin to see a luminous field in their field of awareness. It's like a white mass in front of them. Then they will go and penetrate it and to see the kalapas. And then when you see the kalapas, each kalapa also has got the 4 elements. And then in each kalapa, you try to find out the elements, to locate the elements in them, and to see their nature of arising and passing away. Nature in both the actual arising and passing, as well as the causes and conditions behind them. But this is a more detailed way of doing it. All right. So these are just two. There's a variety of methods that are available.
Okay, going back to 31 parts of the body, Bhante mentioned that it is a method of reducing lust or abandoning lust. Speaking for myself, I found that it works for me in actually cutting through a bit of my delusion, in the sense that, like you say, well, in my earlier days, before this practice, you look at the mirror and you try to beautify yourself. But these days, having sort of looked at the 31 parts of the body, I'm no longer attached to, your personal. I mean, of course, to make sure that you're at least reasonably clean and all that. But I find I'm no longer attached to it. I find that, and one day it just came all by itself. My past practice in my younger days. Before you go out, you always make sure you put on some lipstick.
Yes, supposed to stand across.
In my younger days, I used to, whenever you go out, you always put a little bit of roach and just to beautify yourself. And then one day, and it's not because of keeping the 8 precepts, one day I was standing in front of the mirror and I was going to apply the lipstick. And then I said, whom are you deluding? And then it happened. It just came by itself. So I just want to add that it does help in cutting through a bit of delusion.
Was it due to 31 parts of the body, or was it due to some other meditation, like watching your mind?
No. Like, I remember reading about the 31 parts of the body, and then I say, oh yeah, it's nothing, All this is just actually dirty stuff. And it's just covered, and that's why they say beauty is skin deep. It's just covered by a layer of skin, and if you remove the skin, it's absolutely awful. So
but you didn't really do the meditation. You just read it, and then that's what occurred to you, right? And that's stuck into your memory.
I read it, and I reflected on it using, like you say, retrospection, inspection, or recalling sati. Just getting, hey, hang on a minute. What is this? The reflection, what is this body actually?
Mm-hmm.
And then it just came one day in front of a mirror, and I took out this and said, whom are you kidding? And then it just stopped. Safe on cosmetics.
You must have done it a lot in your past lives to be able to drop it so fast. Okay, Sadhu. This is about the question about the elements or the body parts, which is treated in a different way in the Dhatu-Vibhanga Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 140. This also has something to do with the Abhidhammika's view, and which seems to make the Abhidhammika's view questionable. Yeah, because according to the Abhidhammikas, elements are supposed to be something you can directly experience, and they are supposed to be vipassana object, right? Not because it can be experienced directly. Whereas the 32 parts of the body, they cannot be experienced directly, yeah? And they are therefore not to be contemplated. They cannot be contemplated in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta, since they are just concepts, just imagination. But in Dhatu-Vibhanga Sutta, it's strange that the Buddha actually defined the 4 great elements according to the body parts. And then, following that, he said that these can be looked upon as anatta. Okay, let's look at what he says. According to the Dhatu-Vibhanga Sutta, the earth element is defined as the head has, body has, from there until feces, or anything else internal within oneself that's hard, solid, and sustained by craving. This is called the internal earth element. Now both the internal earth element and the external earth element are simply earth element. And that should be seen as it has occurred with right panya. This is not mine, this is not me, this is not myself. Okay, so you see that there is a combination of concept and ultimate reality here, right? The Buddha is actually trying to define ultimate reality in terms of the concepts of the 31 parts of the body, those parts anyway, a portion of those parts. And then the water element is defined as those parts of the body starting from bile until urine. Yeah, you see bile, phlegm, and so forth until urine, or anything else internal within oneself that's water, watery, and sustained by craving. This is called the internal water element. Now both the internal water element and the external water element are simply water element, and that should be seen as it has occurred with right panya. This is not mine, this is not me, this is not myself. Fire element. So he ran out of the 32 parts already. So now he's coming out with something else. That by which the body is warmed, aged, and consumed with fever, and that by which what is eaten, drunk, consumed, and tasted gets properly digested, or anything else internal within oneself that's fiery, and sustained by craving. This is called the internal fire element. Now both the internal fire element and the external fire element are simply fire element, and that should be seen as it has occurred with right panya. This is not mine, this is not me, this is not myself. How about the wind element? Upgoing winds, downgoing winds, winds in the stomach, winds in the intestines, winds that course through the body, in and out breathing, or anything else internal within oneself that's windy, and sustained by craving. This is called the internal wind element. Now both the internal wind element and the external wind element are simply wind element, and that should be seen as it has occurred with right panya. This is not mine, this is not me, this is not myself. Okay, so can you see here that there's actually a combination of so-called ultimate realities and concepts. In fact, the Buddha did not make any distinction, between ultimate realities and concept. The word Paramattha Dhamma cannot actually be found in the suttas. This is later invention that was created by the Abhidhammikas. And in many other suttas, the Buddha encouraged the monks to contemplate anicca, dukkha, anatta, not only with regard to ultimate realities, but with regard to very mundane conceptual things as well. Right? For example, his definition of dukkha starts off with something absolutely conceptual. Birth, sickness, old age, death, not getting what you want, associating with those you don't like, and dissociating, separation from those you love. These are all very conceptual in nature, aren't they? And then finally he ended up with, in brief, the 5 aggregates of clinging are dukkha. Right? So just to bear this in mind, that in the suttas there's actually no clear-cut distinction between ultimate reality and conceptual reality.